All right, everybody, this is going to be a banger of an episode. I am a coach. I have been climbing for a long time, and I have some opinions about popular training methods in the gym. We've chosen 10 to review today. Some of them are actual like strength training methods, others are like movement drills that we often see people doing, and I've got some hot takes. Let's talk about one-arm climbing. Done a certain way, this is absolutely one of my favorite drills for practicing and improving my use of momentum, but it's not the way I see most people do it. And the way I see most people do it makes me angry and sad. And if you're someone who is currently doing this, stop it. I don't like it. It's not doing anything for you. I will show you how you can easily fix it to make it an absolute banger of a drill. So, what I see a lot of people doing. Okay? Stop it. Stop doing that. The arm behind the back thing to remind you not to use your arm, bad idea. If you fall and land on it, it's probably going to hurt, but you're also not learning how to use it for momentum. So the two tips that I'd add to make this a really, really good drill: keep that other arm free so you can use it to generate and direct your momentum, and try to use as little strength as possible. So doing this uses a lot more power than you realize. Doing this, now it's a good drill. Pretty much the first thing anyone learns when they get into climbing, any early lesson they'd have would talk about keep your arms straight to save energy. Not terrible advice, but an oversimplification. It is good to practice keeping your arms straight, but if people don't understand that that advice is context dependent and they try to apply it all of the time and they think that bending their arms is wrong or bad, this is now not helpful. So yes, by all means, practice keeping your arms straight to learn to do more with your lower body. That is a good thing to do, but be aware that this isn't the correct way of climbing everything. As an example, I'm going to demonstrate on an easy climb how keeping my arms straight is really, really nice. Then I'm going to try and do a hard climb with my arms straight, and we'll see how that goes for me. This is nice because the amount of weight on my hands and my arms will be about the same whether I'm doing this or this, so I may as well lengthen my arms, save energy in my biceps, and do the majority of the work by learning to twist back and forth. In this context is a great time to be keeping my arms straight. Now let's have a look at how what I've just learned does not apply. Oh no, there's no way. Whereas if I bend my arms and stay close, yes, keeping arms straight is good, but please be aware that that is context dependent. It's only appropriate at certain times. Right, next one. Hey folks, very quick pause on today's video so I can tell you about the supporter of today's episode, Humu. So I've used Humu a bunch of times in the past and actually been using it a lot more recently because, exciting news, I've started doing a lot more training, which I'm very, very happy about, but it means I have less time and I am hungrier. So the same thing happens to me multiple times per week. I'm sure the same thing happens to other people as well. I finish doing all of my training and then I realize I have about 5 minutes before I need to start work and I'm hungry and I need to get some fuel. Now that's where Humu has been really, really helpful for me because in that specific scenario, my options are kind of limited. I can either run to the shops nearby and get myself some lunch, or I can use this. And for a bunch of reasons, this is a way better choice for me. First off, it's way quicker. I can make and eat it within 5 minutes easily and then get straight back to work again. So incredibly convenient. It's also way cheaper than anything I'd likely get for lunch nearby. I think it's £1.68 for a full serving from this. And there's like 17 servings in there. And then for me, crucially, for wanting to support all the training that I'm doing, this is way more nutritionally complete than any of the alternatives that I'd find nearby. In terms of carbohydrates, protein, vitamins, there's no other option which would be anywhere near as quick or as cheap, which I could make myself and just store in a bag in the office where I want to go and grab it from. This is the best choice by a mile for me. So if you'd like to try this out for yourselves, click the link in our description, use the code CLIMB15 to get 15% off your order. That's only available for the next 30 days and it's only for people who have not tried Humu before. So you get to try it out for the first time. Now, back to the video. Common drill that I've seen, quite a fun one. I'm not saying it's not fun. Climbing with bells on your wrists and ankles. I have done this drill before in a video for newer climbers, or particularly if you're teaching juniors. Really, really, really fun way of making yourself slow down and be more precise. If you're not a child or a beginner though, I think we can do a slightly more grown-up exercise. One of the issues that I have with this is that actually climbing at the speed you would if you were climbing with bells on your feet or hands, I wouldn't normally climb something like this It is good for me to move slowly so that I can learn to be precise, but I don't really want to learn to climb like this. This is burning so much more strength. If you're focusing on precision, then I actually think it's better to move quickly between your targets and only slow down when you get near. So if you're training precision, I think you actually do want to move fast and only slow down when you get near the holds. If you're training balance and static movement, then I've got other drills which I prefer for doing that. But bells on your hands and feet, not necessary, unless you're doing it specifically just to have fun. Repeating boulders. Don't know if this is a hot take, but I think this is pretty much one of the best things that all climbers can do. Beginners, intermediate, advanced climbers, repeating climbs in your warm-up or repeating projects that you've managed before is a brilliant way of learning more about them and learning to climb them more confidently and understanding the subtleties of the climb better. The only thing I'd add is that when you are repeating climbs, don't just switch your brain off and just do a million laps assuming you're going to get better. Repeat them with some mindfulness. Pay attention to which bits feel good, which bits felt a bit rough and a bit sketchy. Try to clean up certain parts of the climb. So long as you're thinking about what you're doing whilst doing lots and lots of laps, absolutely one of the best exercises I think any climber could do. I feel like I've kept my thumb up for ages. Falling practice. In principle, yes, completely agree. Absolutely do this. If you're scared of falling off, you need to practice falling off. But I've seen a bunch of climbers recently who I suspect have gone on a fear of falling course. And I don't want to poo-poo anyone's specific courses, but I think if you've learned a very specific way of falling correctly and you've practiced it, this is actually not that helpful. I'll show exactly the type of fall I mean, because I see people do it quite a lot nowadays. Okay, I'm gonna fall.
Okay, go for it. Wow.
Perfect falling technique, right? Have you ever seen anyone fall like that in the World Cups? No. Why do you think that is?
Because you never fall like that naturally.
No, and that's the issue, is like, I think I can only do that perfect fall if I've given myself the perfect setup for it. In real world applications, you're gonna be falling unexpectedly in loads and loads of different positions. I actually saw on Instagram a method of training unpredictable falls, which I think I'm going to get Sam to demonstrate with me very quickly. So Sam is going to jump in the air when I say, and I'm going to make his landing unpredictable. You ready?
Yep.
Okay, jump. Nice. Do it again. Nice, do it again. It's so much fun. Every one of those falls feels pretty manageable. It feels like it's kind of tripped over.
Yeah. It feels big, but so much. Like, it doesn't feel like you're actually going to hurt yourself.
Like, we're actually just going to carry on doing this for a while, because this is really fun.
Now me on you.
Let's both do it. 3, 2, 1.
Wait!
Okay, let's talk about fingerboarding, or hangboarding. Basically hanging off the fingers, trying to make the fingers stronger. I think I've got 2 bits of advice for this. One would be that if you're a new climber and you're scared of fingerboarding because you think it might injure you, which when I was younger is advice that I gave as a coach, which I was wrong about. I also thought, oh no, fingerboarding, a bit intense for beginners, oh you can get injured. I was absolutely wrong. No, I think even if you're a completely new climber, you could start fingerboarding immediately, so long as you're really careful about the intensity that you're doing. If you are doing it frequently at low intensity though, it's a really, really good way of building strong, healthy fingers. Now let me just give a couple of examples of what I mean by doing it at a really low intensity. I could hang off the fingerboard, but keep my feet on the floor. And I've got most of the weight in my feet. Another example of a low intensity option of fingerboarding, which is suitable for beginners, getting a foot block and attaching it to a small amount of weight. It's only 10 kilos. I think for a lot of beginner climbers that would be doable, and it's pretty safe. You need to warm up first, but if you want to start training finger strength, it's a really nice way of doing it. Another option for low intensity fingerboarding for beginners, resistance band. This is often done as a warm-up for a lot of climbers once you've got pretty strong fingers, but really nice low intensity weight which you could easily do, like sat at home watching TV, great way to stay strong. Very good, I recommend this. Fingerboarding tip for people who already have quite strong fingers. I think the mistake that a lot of advanced climbers make is assuming that if they train really hard on the fingerboard and get stronger fingers, it's going to automatically equate to them climbing harder. Just be careful that if you are focusing heavily on getting stronger fingers and spending more time fingerboarding, check that this is definitely a priority for you. Are you actually limited by your finger strength, or are there some movement or some mindset skills that you could work on instead? For a lot of climbers, I would recommend movement and mindset above fingerboarding, but not for everybody. Just double check that it is a priority. I've got an analogy that I use to illustrate this idea of why getting stronger might not immediately work, but it also helps me prioritize how I want to improve my climbing. I imagine that climbing is made up of 3 broad aspects. Our physical capacity, meaning strength, flexibility, endurance, obviously finger strength will be one of those things, efficient movement, and our technique, our ability to move in the most efficient way, which is a fairly broad definition, but let's keep it broad for now. And then final one, my mindset, my ability to actually concentrate and perform what I need to when I'm under a significant amount of pressure. If I had a huge amount of physical capacity, I've got a lot of finger strength, this is me as a younger climber, I'm very, very strong, I'm decently flexible, I've got a lot that I could give. All of that physical capacity needs to pass through the filter of my actual efficient movement, and I was not very efficient. So all of that physical capacity gets reduced to this because it has to go through that filter. Then we get to the next filter, which is my mindset. I also hadn't worked on this much, so maybe that was even smaller and limited me even more. So now you can see that it doesn't matter how big I make my physical capacity, it's always just going to go through that first filter and then through that second one. So, and this is what I've now done with my climbing, I focused on widening those filters so that even if I got weaker than I was before, more of it was actually passing through those filters and ending up at my top level of climbing. Climbing in a weight vest. Pretty logical thing to assume, and I've done this myself when I was a younger climber. If I put on a weight vest and I do all my climbing and I feel heavier and it adds resistance, and then I take the weight vest off after all my training, I will feel like a god and I'll suddenly instantly feel loads lighter and everything will be easier. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works. A bunch of research showing why that's not the way it works. It can work a bit if you're specific about the style of climbing you do in it. If I put on a weight vest and I just climb anything and everything, not going to do loads for me. I tried this out myself, and mostly what I found was I have to climb a bit better. Mostly I just use more technique and it doesn't actually make me focus on strength. If I am specific about doing hard overhanging climbs where I'm mostly just relying on hand strength anyway, then this is a useful tool. I'll do one of those, we'll see that it's hard and it is actually contributing to me working hard on my finger strength, and then I'll do some slabs where you can see like this is doing nothing. I would say it's quite nice to stand here. It's nice to have a little belly. That's it. That's the only really good thing about it. Campusing. Pretty clear thoughts on who should be campusing and who should not be campusing. Now, don't get me wrong. Campusing is very fun and a very good way to exercise your muscles and feel strong and powerful. But I think the people I regularly see campusing in climbing gyms aren't the people who are going to benefit from it most. If you are wearing rental shoes or you're in like your first or second pair of climbing shoes, and you are confident in your ability to campus to the top of an overhang, even like on jugs, this doesn't need to be a priority for you. On the other hand, if you are several years into your climbing and you are maybe in your 10th pair of climbing shoes and you don't feel confident that you could campus to the top of an overhang, I think this absolutely could be a priority for you. If you are getting into campusing, a couple of good things for us to talk about. Number one, I'd say campusing on boulders rather than on the campus board is really, really good to do because although it's not as measurable, you get so much more variety in the movement you're doing. It's a lot more interesting, a lot more fun. Downside, it is less measurable. You can't specifically measure that you are definitely getting stronger or not. If you are campusing on boulders, please be aware that there are two distinct ways you could do this. I think if you do it without momentum and you rely as much on strength as possible, this is a really good way of training strength. If I try and campus and use the smallest amount of strength possible, I end up training much more coordination and momentum skills than if I was using muscles and slowing down instead. Let's talk about shoes, my favourite Ondra comps. These are fantastic to climb in. But if anyone's looking at this going like, oh, so Louis is saying get some really good shoes and I'll magically become a better climber, no, that is the opposite of what I'm saying. If you are a newer climber and you think that getting an expensive, fancy, probably quite tight and painful pair of shoes is going to make you climb harder, not the case. More likely, you're going to quite quickly wear through them because you haven't yet developed the footwork that will make full use of those shoes. If you're in your first few years of climbing, I'd recommend aiming for economical, comfy choices of shoes in which you can comfortably learn good footwork, and then you can get a really fancy pair of shoes once you've developed really good footwork skills. Or, because I'm not saying you don't deserve to have a nice pair of shoes if you're a new climber, but keep those really nice pair of shoes in reserve. Don't do all your climbing in them. Only put them on for special occasions, and keep your comfy, cheaper pair of shoes for doing all of your practicing. Only thing I wanted to add was people who I think do need to get some new climbing shoes. Buying a new pair feels like quite a big commitment. So I think a lot of people carry on climbing in their shoes for longer than they might want to. There is something to be said for climbing in shoes which are in a slightly bad condition because you learn to trust your feet even more. But I think there's a tipping point. When your shoes are so worn out that your toes are poking out of the end, which I do see quite a lot of, it means you start choosing to use different foot techniques than you'd naturally use if the shoes were in good condition. If it becomes so worn out here that I start practicing not standing here anymore and I start standing on the side of my shoe, now it's time for new shoes. Bit of advice that I'm possibly a bit biased about, whether or not to get a coach. I think a lot of newer climbers don't get coaching because they think they're not good enough, and they think it would be a waste of the coach's time, or that they need to develop a certain level of strength or skill so that they're able to get some good coaching. I'd actually recommend coaching for most beginner climbers. It helps to avoid picking up bad habits that you need to eliminate later. Might save you loads of time practicing something which actually ends up not being that useful to you. Overall, I would say no, you don't need a coach, but things will be easier and faster and possibly more enjoyable if you get some coaching intervention early on in your climbing. I'd also say for advanced level climbers, and actually I guess I'd include myself in this category now. I think there's definitely a tendency, if you've been climbing for a long time, to assume that you should just be able to do it all yourself, especially if you work as a coach. I was very reluctant to get any coaching for myself, so I thought, well, that feels like an admission that I don't know what I'm doing. And actually, now that I've got some coaching, I've realized, oh, having someone else take responsibility for your climbing so I can carry on focusing on everything else, really, really helpful. Having someone else to be accountable to, really, really, really helpful. I can just follow the steps they've told me to and I don't really think about it as much. So obviously, getting coaching is not free most of the time. I mean, good, free coaching. Watch our videos, we've got loads of helpful tips. So I'm not saying you need to get coaching. As I said, it can make things faster. I've also met a lot of people who didn't get a coach and have got on perfectly fine. Sometimes I avoid spending money on something because I think it's too expensive. Then in reality, I think, oh, but this is something that's going to last me for the whole year. It's actually something I really, really care about. I spend more money on things I care less about. So I actually nowadays do enjoy spending my money on stuff that helps me be a better climber and helps me enjoy it more. But that being said, it doesn't have to be for everybody. Last thing I'd say about coaching though, as younger climbers, we often get the opportunity to climb in groups with other junior climbers. When we're on a junior team, or we're just doing like an after-school climbing club, you get the benefit of climbing with the coach who can give you loads of good advice, and you also get this benefit of climbing with other climbers who are different skill levels, different abilities, and you can learn loads of good stuff from them. And then when you become an adult, there might be like a beginner class that you can do where you meet some other beginners. And after that, there's not really that much option for climbing in a group with other adults. If you find those opportunities, grab them. Really, really helpful. Neat segue. If you're based in London and you would like that idea of getting regular coaching with a team of other site climbers at around your level, click the link in our description, find out more about our in-person teams. They're for adults, they're for juniors, they're really, really, really good. So there we go, folks. Those are 10 popular drills or training methods or ideas that people have to try and make themselves better climbers, thoroughly reviewed by me. If you disagree with anything that I've said, put it in the comments. If you think we've missed some important drills or techniques or training exercises that you would like us to review, put them in the comments. Aside from that, subscribe, like the video, all the healthy YouTube things. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.